Seasons 1 to 4 of Game of Thrones is seen as peak television. Those seasons are without a doubt like the LeBron James of TV, the Cristiano Ronaldo of TV, the Margot Robbie of TV. And the main character in those earlier seasons was the infamous Tyrion Lannister. This character was essentially the face of television for the early 2010s. Peter Dinklage, who plays Tyrion Lannister, won 4 goddamn Emmys for this role. He won more Emmys than I won participation medals in my life. But what made this character so great? What made people flock towards Tyrion Lannister so hard? To the point where white people literally started getting tattoos of Tyrion on their body. And why is he the fan favorite character to so many people, including me? Well, believe it or not, that's exactly it. Tyrion is not only our favorite character, but he's also author of the book's favorite character, George R.R. Martin. George R.R. Martin said he always loves to write about Tyrion because he is his favorite character. Not only because Tyrion is pretty easy to write, but he also loves to write about Tyrion because Tyrion has a lot of infamous scenes where he slaps Joffrey, him being the unexpected hero so many times, and most importantly Tyrion's sarcasm and charisma.
Well, Tyrion is my favorite. There's no doubt about that. You know, he's the easiest to write. At least for the first 3 books, he was the easiest to write. He got harder to write with book 5 in particular because he's in a very dark place right there. And but he's witty and he's intelligent. And Tyrion is almost like what I wish I could be because I'm not as witty as Tyrion. Well, I am as witty as Tyrion because I invent all of the witty things that Tyrion says.
So obviously there's some favoritism with Tyrion going on, and you can tell it's there. Tyrion has so much depth to his character that characters like Jon Snow and Daenerys are kind of lacking in the show. If you're someone who is blind, Tyrion is a dwarf. And when you watch season 1, you would assume that he would be super insecure about this. Because in real life, if we were dwarves, we would feel insecure about it a lot. Like, it's hard being a dwarf in real life. You get stared at in public, people bully you, you can't ride roller coasters, you can't lie to women and say you're actually 6 foot and the picture just makes you look shorter. It's a hard life being a dwarf. And every human watching Game of Thrones has some sort of insecurity because we're all human. And a lot of people see themselves in Tyrion. And they are surprised to see that Tyrion doesn't let his dwarfism stop him from living. And he wears his dwarfism like armor.
Let me give you some advice, bastard. Never forget what you are. The rest of the world will not. Wear it like armor, and it can never be used to hurt you.
What the hell do you know about being a bastard?
All dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes.
That's what you call bars right there. And that was such a great introduction to Tyrion in the show. Immediately dropping a harder quote than anything Martin Luther King ever dropped. Come on, that's how you introduce a character in one of his first scenes. And this scene is a lot more rewatchable because later you find out that Tyrion is hated. He's hated because he killed his mom during birth, his mom died giving birth to him, and how he is constantly being abused by his father Tywin. And we find out later on by Oberyn, who we will talk about later on, we find out that even Cersei was abusing Tyrion when he was a baby. So there's so much depth to Tyrion and the scene that he has with Jon Snow. And it's one of the main reasons why Peter Dinklage even accepted the role of Tyrion Lannister. Peter Dinklage, who is also a dwarf, believe it or not, didn't want another role where he has to play like some bullshit Christmas elf. He wanted an actual character. And it meant a lot to him that Tyrion wasn't just like this comic, fantasy, magical dwarf. Tyrion actually had a story to tell.
Yeah, I just wanted to not be a fantasy dwarf. I wanted to not to be crass, but I wanted to have a dick.
Yeah.
Like, and that's so like, it's like, you know, when clinically what you are has become sort of poached by the fantasy world as a term for somebody who's not human. Like a gnome or an ogre or whatever else. There's a fairy, pixie, leprechaun, elf, everything, dwarf. No, that one's real. That one's actually a thing. There's no gnomes in the world, but that's a thing. So, but therefore, when you do that, you're
clipping your balls. You got all kinds of fantastical things: dragons, unicorns, dwarves.
Yeah, you're just clipped. And I was like, I can't be clipped, guys. I can't be clipped.
And one of the biggest reasons why Tyrion became a fan favorite character really early on is because he was hilarious. He would always drop some like edgy joke here and there. And the best part about it is that no one can really talk crap about him back. You can't really talk crap to Tyrion again because what are you gonna say? Tyrion is a dwarf? He's heard that so many times. But Tyrion's wittiness is what makes you love him, because he uses it not only for entertainment but also to survive. That's one of the reasons why we all love him, because he is handling problems in the most human way. He doesn't have a sword or like an AK-47 to shoot his way out of a kidnapping. He doesn't have the muscles to do the talking for him like he's Brock Lesnar or something. He uses his tongue to get out of problems just like how I do in the bedroom. Tyrion's trial by combat is a perfect example of this, and it's something that the author talks about as well.
Tyrion just talks, and his tongue is always getting him into trouble. So his weapons are wit and sarcasm and, scathing observances and truth-telling. And the situation in the Eyrie is a clear example. He can't seem to persuade Lysa or Catelyn that he's innocent of the charges against him, and he demands a trial by battle. Lysa is a woman, and the Lord of the Eyrie, her son, Sweet Robin, is a young boy, and a sickly young boy at that. They're not going to fight, so she chooses a champion. So he demands the right, since he's a dwarf and not a trained warrior, to choose his own champion. And she is maneuvered into this and says, well, yes, if anyone will fight for you, expecting that no one will, because they're in a hall completely surrounded by her own men.
Season 2 Tyrion is when he really turned into the GOAT. The protagonist of Season 1 got his body circumcised and he is gone. And Season 2 needed a protagonist, and Tyrion came like it was a WWE John Cena Royal Rumble return. And everyone loved Tyrion. And we loved him because he was essentially the only good enemy. It made things difficult for the fanbase, because on one hand we all want the Starks to win and destroy the Lannisters like Cersei and Tywin and Joffrey, but that would also destroy Tyrion, and we don't want to see his head on a spike. Especially after Tyrion goes out of his way to help Sansa, who is a character that definitely needs like a break from life right now. But the main reason why Tyrion became a fan favorite character is because how much hatred in the world there was for Joffrey Baratheon. Everyone hated Joffrey Baratheon so much. I hated him so much. If I had a choice to go to dinner with Joffrey Baratheon or Adolf Hitler, I would still probably pick Joffrey Baratheon, but I wouldn't be happy about it. And Tyrion was our savior. Tyrion was slapping Joffrey just like how every viewer watching wanted to slap Joffrey. And it was so satisfying to see, man. Especially after the crap that Tyrion had to go through in Season 2. Tyrion has every reason to let the Lannisters just crumble out. But Tyrion is the only one holding the fort together while the fort is being constantly attacked by like boogie bombs by like Robb Stark, Stannis, Jaime being a hostage, and Joffrey being weird. And all the things that Tyrion had to worry about. And we feel the pressure he has on him. And slapping Joffrey just felt so satisfying with the pressure still on him. And Tyrion's intelligence really saved House Lannister in Season 2. And Tyrion just never stopped dropping banger quotes.
We've had vicious kings, and we've had idiot kings, but I don't know if we've ever been cursed with a vicious idiot.
You can't!
I can, I am!
They attacked me!
They threw a cow pie at you, so you decide to kill them all! They're starving, you fool! All because of a war you started!
You're talking to a king!
And now I've struck a king! Did my hand fall from my wrist?
And in Season 2, when we thought we couldn't love Tyrion anymore, he steps up. Tyrion is not a soldier, he's not a warrior, he's not supposed to be the hero. Tyrion probably knows his way around the female clitoris more than he knows his way around a sword. But in Season 2 Episode 9, Stannis and his main host Sir Davos show up, and Tyrion uses his IQ and sends the flammable bow to them, and sends it over there, and bam, with one move, Tyrion's KD ratio goes through the roof. But he's up against Stannis Baratheon. Stannis Baratheon is a serious man, he ain't gonna go down without a fight. And the troops come down and the Lannister army has no leader. I mean, the Hound is like, screw all of this, I'm gonna go find Arya Stark and enjoy these next 2 seasons. Joffrey's bitch ass doesn't even want to be there and he cowards out. And the character, the dwarf, the imp, the person who has every reason to run, the person who has every reason to say that the world is just unfair to him right now, he is the one who is still fighting. And he shows up more than anyone and delivers a phenomenal battle speech.
Don't fight for your king! And don't fight for his kingdoms! Don't fight for honor, don't fight for glory. Don't fight for riches because you won't get any. This is your city Stannis means to sack. That's your gate he's ramming. If he gets in, it will be your houses he burns. Your gold he steals. Your women he will rape. Those are brave men knocking at our door. Let's go kill them!
And I deadass thought that Tyrion was gonna be game ended this episode, because I was stuck with the trauma of like Ned Stark being game ended last season. But thank God he came back. In the books after this battle, Tyrion loses his nose, but in the show they kept Tyrion's nose because of legal reasons.
Tyrion's nose is a good example. I mean, yeah, they didn't cut off his nose. I can write that, yes, and they cut off his nose, and then I can make references in the subsequent books to him having half a nose or having a big scar and to how it itches and he scratches it. That's relatively easy for me to do. Actually, cutting off Peter Dinklage's nose was prohibited by the Actors Guild. So we were stuck with, well, if we wanted to do that, we would have to essentially put a piece of green screen, a little green kind of thing on the end of his nose that he would have to wear in all of his scenes, and then we could CGI every moment he appeared, the nose scar, and that was just way too expensive. Yes. I mean, it's the practicalities of doing it again.
Tyrion in season 3 was where everyone was just grateful that he was alive, because it's very obvious that Game of Thrones is Tyrion Lannister's show now. And the TV show had some insane popularity. Tyrion himself was so popular that people started getting tattoos of Tyrion, and the actor Peter Dinklage was one of the most famous people in the entire world.
You said, I can't walk down the street anymore because of this show.
That's true.
Now, were you complaining or what was going on there?
Well,
just stating a fact.
Take that, what you will, from that.
Mm-hmm.
It's as they say, it's a blessing and a curse.
Is it? Yeah.
Because I love the fans. They are our joy, why we make the show. But sometimes they can follow you for several blocks. And one block is okay.
And the writers knew how popular Tyrion became, so they made some changes from the book that I really enjoyed. The main one is definitely the Sansa Tyrion bedding scene. In this scene, Tyrion really doesn't want to do the nasty with Sansa, who is obviously just a hostage to House Lannister. I really like this change because it keeps the likability of Tyrion. Because Tyrion at this time was still being bullied, especially now with his dipshit father back in town. And Tyrion was always being hit with some new lore about himself. And this made the audience feel for Tyrion again. Tyrion just saved House Lannister, and now he's getting hated on by the people he helped save. And his story and lore just keeps getting darker and darker. His backstory is darker than Under My Bed.
When have you ever done something that wasn't in your interest, but solely for the benefit of the family?
The day that you were born. I wanted to carry you into the sea and let the waves wash you away. Instead, I let you live. And I brought you up as my son. Because you're a Lannister.
But season 4 is when Tyrion without a doubt put himself in the GOAT category of television characters. A category that no one else in Game of Thrones would ever come close to besides maybe Tywin and Ned Stark. Season 4 in my opinion is the greatest season of television. And when you're the protagonist of the greatest season of television, it's only going to put you more and more into that GOAT category. The season starts off with the Purple Wedding. And it's possibly my second favorite episode of Game of Thrones. And yeah, I forgot to mention my favorite episode of Game of Thrones is the Battle of Blackwater. But Tyrion gets accused of poisoning Joffrey. And man, it sends chills down my spine. What a fantastic episode this was. And Tyrion in prison scenes with Jaime and Podrick are great. Because he's still playing the Game of Thrones in prison. It's funny because Tyrion played more Game of Thrones in prison in season 4 than he did in all of season 6 and 7. And then we get to my favorite scene of all time. There are a lot of great scenes in fiction. Anakin burning alive, I'm Flying Jack from Titanic, and any Sydney Sweeney scene. But in my opinion, this scene is the best scene in fiction. Tyrion walking into a 20v1 like Drake, and getting his trial, the deal that Jaime made for Tyrion to go to the wall, Shay's betrayal, Tyrion's broken heart, Tyrion's speech, and him somehow winning the trial again by once again saying he demands a trial by combat. And the music of the scene, my god, it was perfect.
I will not give my life for Joffrey's murder, and I know I'll get no justice here, so I will let the gods decide my fate. I demand a trial by combat.
Shay's betrayal hurt me so much the first time I watched the show. I remember I had to take a dump after watching the scene for the first time, and I just sat in the washroom for 5 hours trying to understand what I just watched. It was truly a masterfully crafted scene and betrayal. And Tyrion talks to Oberyn, and this scene is so much better in the show. In fact, Tyrion's arc in season 4 is better than his arc in like the last quarter of A Storm of Swords, I would argue. But I'll get to that later on. But man, was this some heartbreaking lore against Tyrion, man. And right at the end, it was a relief to know that Oberyn would be his champion. But then an episode later, it turned out to be not the wisest move. Oberyn's head got turned into a red velvet cake. And then Tyrion kills Shae. I have a lot to say about the scene, but I'll give context in a bit. But Tyrion goes to kill Tywin, and it's just the perfect conclusion to Tyrion's arc. Everything in Tyrion's story made sense for the scene to happen.
You're no son of mine. I am your son. I have always been your son.
This was such a cool scene, man. Gotta give it to Peter Dinklage here. He was such a great Tyrion. I mean, even George himself was astonished how well Peter Dinklage managed to play such a complex character with such an intense script. Obviously, no book character can be a perfect one-to-one adaptation to the show, but when the author of the book says you need to play a character and he is shocked at how good you played them, you know you've done a great job.
Who has been, in terms of the castings, who has been the actor who most resembles, either physically or in terms of the way they've inhabited the role, the way you had it in your head?
Well, probably Peter Dinklage as Tyrion. Not that there aren't differences. I mean, if you carefully read the descriptions in the book, Tyrion in the books is actually shorter than Peter Dinklage. So probably the first time Peter's been told he's too tall for a role, but
yeah,
he is taller than Tyrion in the books, and he's considerably better looking. I mean, the books make a certain amount of comment on the fact that Tyrion is not attractive by conventional standards and has that cross to bear in addition to his height. But nonetheless, with these tiny exceptions, he is Tyrion. I mean, he has thoroughly inhabited that role, and he was really the only person. I mean, at that very first meeting I had with David and Dan, after we discussed all the story stuff, we got into playing the casting game and who would like, who would be good, could we get this person, could we look at that person, and when we got to Tyrion, it was Peter Dinklage. There was no one. We never read anyone else for that role. We never had meetings with anyone else for that role. When we got the green light, we just went out and made an offer to Peter Dinklage, and thankfully he accepted. And you know, here we are, and an Emmy and a Golden Globe later, and the Scream Awards. Never forget that, where his head came out of a giant pool of water. That was memorable.
But unfortunately, when Tyrion shot that crossbow that killed Tywin, not only did he kill Tywin, but he also killed his own character, and arguably killed the entire show, because season 5 to season 8 with every character couldn't match season 1 to 4, and they tried making Jon and Daenerys the fan favorites, which they were good, but they couldn't come anywhere close to the greatness of season 1 to 4 Tyrion. I have another giant video coming out on Tyrion where I will discuss seasons 1 all the way to season 8, but in order to make that video I have to get a new phone because that's going to be a big video, and I create all my videos on a 7-year-old iPhone. So when I get a new phone in like a month or two, I'll make that video where I discuss things like Shae's death in the books versus TV show, and the downfall of Tyrion. And the video will come out this year, don't worry. But hopefully this video made people remember the absolute 1 in a million gem that was prime Tyrion Lannister. And yeah, that's it for this video. Like, subscribe, and peace.